Hola, buen dia, it's me, Peppermint. And when I'm not on RuPaul's Drag Race or simply being New York City's sweetest diva, I'm tuned into the fabulously empowering Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice Power Hour, coming to you every weeknight at 7 p.m. live from our good old friends at the BRCSJ Virtual HQ via their Facebook page. Tune in tonight.
Need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers.
Social justice, power hour, power hour, power hour. Social justice.
Good evening to our friends on the East Coast. Good afternoon to our friends in the West, and good in-between time to our friends in those in-between spaces. Welcome, 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 my friends. Welcome to the Social Justice Power Hour. Welcome to the virtual headquarters of the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. My name is Robert C. Schreiber. I am the chief activist here at the center and your host for this evening, as I have been for the past year and over 8 months. We've been doing this every single freaking weeknight since the pandemic started. Over 400 some odd shows, many of them very odd indeed. And we're thrilled to bring back this special show that we did way back in April of 2020 in honor and celebration of the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. We thought it was incredibly appropriate and meaningful to bring back this conversation with Cecilia Muñoz, an inspiration to so many of us, the first in the room for oh so many things and oh so many times. And even here at the Power Hour, she believed in us in our nascent stages, in our mission, in our drive, and what we're doing here on the show, and came to us very early on before the show really blew up. So we're thrilled that she had that belief in us then, and we're thrilled to bring back this conversation now to inspire all of y'all in case you missed it the first time, or you want to catch the subtle nuances this time. I think you really enjoyed this conversation, and we thank Cecilia and we thank you for joining us. And to entice you back, because as I said at the outset, we do this 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific every single frequent weeknight. Please come back to the Power Hour, share virtual communion, and to do that, we're going to entice you with some highlights, just some highlights of what's coming up. Tomorrow night especially, we continue our special celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month with Denise Froman from Poets for Puerto Rico. Going to be a great conversation, so don't miss that tomorrow night. And then coming up on the Power Hour, we have Charisma Price, wonderful poet, strong voice. We have one of the greatest minds of our generation, OG radical of the real, Adam Gopnik with us. Black Boy Joy, y'all, celebrating Black Boy Joy with Kwame Ambalia. Please be here for that. Jim Henson's birthday is coming up. Speaking of celebrating, Brian J. Jones, his biographer, is going to be here to chop it up about Jim Henson and celebrate his birthday. We're doing Throwback Thursdays. As I said, we've done 400 of these shows. All of them, well, except for one maybe, but all of them wonderful, extraordinary moments with some incredible folks who have dropped by the Power Hour. Unbelievably, some of the folks who have made it their business to really share time and energy and spirit with us. Dr. Eric Cervini, queer historian. April Rain, Oscars So White. Amanda Jette Knox, Love Lives Here, the story of her transgender family. And one of my favorite episodes, to be honest, with Sunny Days author David Camp, talking about the children's television revolution in the 70s. And he brought some really special friends, Bernadette Yao from Zoom and Emilio Delgado, otherwise known as Luis on Sesame Street. We have a really special announcement coming up with Wesley Stace, a.k.a. John Wesley Harding, incredible musician. So stay tuned, true believers. We'll be talking about that soon. We have, as always, our free and fabulous queer yoga every Tuesday night. So take a breath with us, both literally and figuratively. Master Jasmani brings us to virtual nirvana. So bring your yoga mat and share some time with us. And then Dr. Peniel Joseph, our beloved BRCSJ Vice President of the Board of Directors here at the Center, an incredible Black Power scholar, and author of The Sword and the Shield, the incredible book about the dichotomy and the similarity of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. On the eve of the paperback release of that pivotal book, Dr. Joseph will share some time with us. Please don't miss Peniel. He is always phenomenal on the show. And speaking of phenomenal on the show, our musician in residence, Jill Sobule, will be with us this Friday night. So ease into the weekend, y'all. Come for a live conversation and concert with Jill. And that's going to be in anticipation of her next live appearance. She's going to be with us October 7th. So if you're anywhere in this area, please do join us for this special benefit concert. It's her only area appearance, and all proceeds from this show go to help us find a new home. We lost our headquarters during the pandemic, and we're looking to find a new space, a new safe space. It's hard to be a safe space without a space, my friends. So join us, have a great concert with Jill, and help us find a new place for our community, our friends, our family, our folks. We really appreciate seeing you for real, but we love seeing you here on the Power Hour as well. And as I said, those are just some highlights. But let's get to it tonight. As I said, in celebration of the start of Hispanic Heritage Month, please do welcome back to our show a special rebroadcast of this phenomenal conversation from back in the day with the extraordinary Cecilia Muñoz. Enjoy, everybody. Be well. Be good. Much love and respect. I'll see you at the other side. Yes. And I want to get right to it tonight because our guest is someone who is an incredible inspiration to so many in our community, being the first and the only in the room so many times in her life and in her career, and trailblazing a path for so many to follow. 20 years with La Raza, winning a MacArthur Fellowship for Immigration and Civil Rights. Now the Vice President of Public Interest Technology and Local Initiatives for New America, which I definitely want to talk about. I find that fascinating. And then previously, 8 years serving under President Obama as the first Latina domestic policy director. And again, just being in the room, being the first or the only in the room, and what that means to so many in so many different communities. And that's definitely something I want to discuss. And without further ado, although wait, because this is what you need to be buying right now. And if you don't trust me and you don't go buy it right now, I promise you about 15 minutes into this conversation, you're going to be dialing it up and getting this book. This book is called More Than Ready, and it's Be Strong and Be You and Other Lessons for Women of Color on the Rise. But I can speak as a woman not of color and not on the rise. This book has been something that I have cherished reading, and incredibly serendipitous at this moment. This book is really something that couldn't have come out at a better time. Maybe not for Cecilia, because the book tour was probably not what she expected, but for the rest of us, it's really a gift as we're home and something that we can share with our families and our friends. So without further ado, I bring to you the inspirational and the wonderful Cecilia Muñoz. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a treat.
Oh, stop. So let's start with the book, because I do want to make sure at the outset we talk about that for a bit, although I really want to talk about your journey and what you've accomplished. But I think it's important that people know that this book is for everybody, right? It's not just for a certain sect of people or community. One of the things that we spotlight at the center is the intersectionality of all our communities and how we have to stand together, walk together, run together, fight together, and love together, right? And this book, really, that's the underlying theme, is how we can pull ourselves up. So can you just share a bit about how you came to write the book and what it means to you, and then what it means to others, what you've heard the experience of others have been?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate it very much. And I relish the opportunity to be invited. I'm honored to be here. I didn't leave the White House thinking that I was going to write a book. I'm a public policy person, and I'm the kind of person who keeps her head down and focuses on my work and, and tries to get it done. And I got pushed by a number of women in my life to think about whether or not I had something to say that might be useful. And at first I did what a lot of women do and said, oh, like, what would I have to say that anyone would care about? And I found meaningful work that, I hope can make a difference in the world. And I'm going to keep my head down and do that. But I got pushed, and I finally realized that, I do a lot of speaking, particularly to people who are in early stages of their careers, either because they're students or they're interns, or they're just getting started. And I realized that I tell the same stories from across my career all the time because they resonate. And invariably when I do, somebody comes up to me afterwards, and 100% of the time that person is a woman. And most of the time that woman is a woman of color. And she'll say something like, that story you told about that time you doubted yourself, or that thing you said about fear, I'm so glad you said that because I thought I was the only one. And that's when that's what sort of helped me accept that I did have something to say, because I actually say it all the time. And once I gave myself permission to believe that I had something to say, that I knew exactly what was going to be in all 10 chapters of the book. And what I feel so passionately is that the world needs women of color as leaders right now. And it's important for us to understand ourselves as the leaders that we are, and for others to see us as the leaders that we are. And sometimes the things that actually are our leadership qualities are not understood as leadership, because we've viewed leadership through a different kind of lens for a really long time. But women of color have been making things happen, leading family and community for a really long time. And it's time for us to understand ourselves as the leaders that we are. And, the title, which is More Than Ready, refers to the notion that the world is more than ready for what we bring. And, we are more than ready to bring it.
I find it interesting, I pick up these things sometimes when we're having conversations like this that are really meaningful. When you said that women come up to you, and often women of color, and then you said it in a whispered tone, and that's probably how they approach you, right?
Yes.
And was that part of it too, that you wanted them to raise their voice?
That's exactly it. So these conversations that I have with people after I tell these stories, and I spoke to 7 other women of color in preparing the book, and you hear their stories too. There are things, the challenges that we face are things we don't talk about. And so the people coming up to me afterwards, they do raise it in whispers. There's a little bit of like you said a thing that I experienced too, but I don't ever talk about it. And I thought I was alone. And one of the amazing experiences that came out of writing this book is that we're not alone. We all go through this stuff. And it turns out we adopt similar strategies to address that stuff. And I feel like I learned that in talking to the women that I talked to in preparing this book. And I think it's time we talked about it, because it's really common. And we're not alone. And I think that sense of community and understanding and support for each other is part of what we need in order to make the change we need to make in the world.
Right, and I think that what I love about the book is it's not just you. It's all these different voices that you've brought along, and some experienced and some starting out, but all members of different communities.
Yeah.
United by one factor or another, but not all the same. And
No.
that's beautiful. It's so smart, and it's so much more powerful that you hear these different voices speaking up and out.
Well, so it was important to me to hear from other women and to sort of test whether my experiences resonated and whether or not the stuff I wrestled with was the stuff that they wrestled with. And the clear answer to that was yes. And so there you hear from people like Patricia Worthy, who's a professor at Howard Law School, who tells just a killer story about actually getting arrested for wearing a pantsuit in court. She's a lawyer. This was back in the 70s. And you hear from a couple of other African-American women with amazing stories to tell. A couple of extraordinary women who are Asian American, one of whom is a member of Congress now, Pramila Jayapal, who talks about earlier in her career being so afraid of speaking in public that she would call in sick if she had to give a presentation. And this is a woman we see on TV all the time at congressional hearings, with eloquence and brilliance and passion and power. And I think it's extraordinary and wonderful that she was like, oh yeah, I used to be totally afraid of speaking in public. And when it was about me, I couldn't really do it. But when it's about something I believe in, I find it easy. I think that's really inspiring. And then a couple of women who I deeply admire, who are Native American women, who had very profound things to say about doubt, about the times when they sense people doubt them, when people assert expertise that they don't have about a community that they're not part of. I think there's real power in that, and it was a real privilege to engage with them.
Right. A couple of things I just want to remind our viewers, the folks that are with us. This is a conversation not just between Cecilia and myself, but with all of us. So if you have a question, a comment, you want to say something, please feel free to make a comment on the page. So Jill asked, please share a link from the book. So the book is more than ready. And we both, I think Cecilia and I both agree strongly you should buy it from a local bookstore. What I love is that you have a link that you've sent out that gets you to, if you put in your zip code, it brings you to your local bookstore. And what I loved about when I put in my zip code, it brought us to Labyrinth Books. And Labyrinth Books is our local bookstore that nationally known, great reputation right in our town, a block and a half from the center, great community partners of ours. So if you're going to buy the book, when you buy the book, buy from a local bookstore, especially now, right? It's really important that they have our support. So for us, Labyrinth Books, that'd be the one that I would suggest. And, they ship nationwide. Cecilia, do you have a certain book store that you want to promote, that you want to shout out?
Yeah, actually, so the link that you can use, which I hope you can post in the chat, is indiebound.org or bookshop.org. And both of those are links which will help you find your local bookseller, and then you can order the book from there. So, my local bookstore, there's one in my neighborhood called Loyalty Books. But you can find your own local bookstore by going to indiebound.org or bookshop.org.
I just threw it up so people can see it. And Jill says, absolutely will do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jill. Really appreciate that. And again, here is the link, indiebound.org. And that's a beautiful thing. I loved it because I typed in the zip code and it was Labyrinth Books, the bookstore that I would recommend, that I want people to go to, and you have a local bookstore by you. So it gets you to your local folks by you and supporting your local, places that so need it right now. We all need to be so much more community minded.
Those books need us right now.
Yeah. So let's talk about some difficulty you faced.
Okay.
Because you're with President Obama, who many of us, look to and admire and love. I do. I just think the man is a brilliant man, and miss him terribly for many reasons.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always a great experience for you otherwise. I mean, there were times where you would face great prejudice or even, folks that would say things that they probably thought were meaningless, but had great effect on you. There was one, and I want to get this right, there was one senator who complimented you on your English. Is that correct?
Yes, that's earlier in my career. That was before I worked in the White House. But yeah, that's in a section of the book where I talk about that it's important to have, I call it finding your bubble. It's important to have a community of people who understand you, to whom you don't have to explain stuff that affects you. And so I tell that story. So this was a member of the United States Senate who, I'm a Latina, and he thought he was being nice. He complimented me on my English, and I'm from Detroit, so my English is pretty good. And so finding your bubble sort of means having a community of people, whether that's your actual family or your chosen family or your colleagues, that you can kind of go home to and say, this thing happened today, and say it, and you don't have to explain why it's irritating, why it's offensive, why it drives you crazy, because they know, right? And then I also make the argument, it's important also to find your way out of your bubble so that you are making an effort to get to know people who are not like you. And sometimes that there's pain associated with that, but I also think that it's important. But yeah, I mean, anybody goes through stuff in the course of their career, or in the course of living their life, that especially now, a lot of us are going through it where, people don't understand you. People say things that are harmful that they may or may not recognize as harmful, and that may or may not be offered maliciously, but it doesn't matter because the pain and the impact is real. And another of the stories that I tell in the book, from my White House years, and my colleagues were wonderful. I mean, the people who, Barack Obama chose to work for him were amazing, extraordinary, brilliant people, but they didn't always know everything. And we were dealing with very hard things. And one of the stories I tell in the book is from the time that I was promoted. For the first 3 years, I was in a job called Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, which was managing the president's relationships with state and local and tribal governments. And then for the next 5 years, I was his domestic policy advisor. And when I got that promotion, the chief of staff at the time, who's a guy named Bill Daley, he left shortly afterwards, and he talked to a couple people who were writing books about the first Obama term. And he told two of them that my being promoted was kind of the last straw, which led to his departure from the White House. And the people who wrote those books got the impression that what he was communicating was that I was an affirmative action hire who was less qualified for the job than the people that he preferred. And, that cost me a couple years of confidence. I found myself sitting at the table thinking, well, shoot, if Bill thought that, I wonder if that's what these other people that I work with think. And I tell that story not as a knock on Bill Daley, who is a dedicated public servant and a good human, but I tell it because it's a pretty common story. And the other women that I spoke to all had similar stories. Tyra Mariani, an African-American woman who is the president of the organization New America, where I work, tells a story about being told at the ripe old age of 23 at the firm she was working at that they didn't see her as management material. She's now the president of my organization, is the best manager I know. Deisha Dyer, an African-American woman who I spoke to, talks about working as a secretary in a firm that would not allow her to take management courses because they told her, oh, well, no, you'll never be a manager. And that, was the kick in the pants that encouraged her to go back to school. She went to community college. She got a White House internship, and she became the social secretary for President and Mrs. Obama, which is a very high-pressure, high-level position. And she crushed it. She was awesome. But she was also told, oh, no, that kind of a job is not for you. And both of them talk about how it, what Tyra says is she took a bullet to her confidence that it took her years to recover from. And it's a common experience. But what I try to do in the book is also give strategies for how I got through that, how the women that I spoke to got through it. And we do, in particular, a couple of things. One is when you doubt yourself or when you sense that people doubt whether or not you belong where you are, we do the work. We buckle down, we do our homework, we study, we capture the material, we make sure that when we sit at the table, we know our stuff, and we kind of lean back into the confidence that gives you. And the other thing we do, and that I recommend, is being relentless about asking for feedback. And that was a very deliberate strategy. The White House is a very high pressure place. And when I wasn't sure if I was getting it done, there were people that I could trust, that I could sit down in their offices. Valerie Jarrett was one of them. I could sit in her office, close the door, and say, that meeting didn't go well. And what did I do? What can I do better to help me be understood? How do I up my game? And I had people around me, including my peers, as well as people who reported to me, that I could sit down with, and I knew that they would give me honest feedback, because the most important thing was to get the job done well. And it's not a sign of weakness to ask. In fact, it's a sign of strength. But it takes some self-possession to remember that, and to ask for the feedback that helps you, be your best self when the moment comes.
Yeah, when we had, as you know, Rafi was here, Rafi Friedman Gerspan, who was the first transgender staffer at the White House, also with Obama, and when we told her that you were joining us, she said you were a rock star. And then when I told you, you said, no, she's the rock star. And it seems like there's this very strong bond between what, and let me ask you this, was it all staff, or was it the women on the staff? Was it women of color on the staff? Was there, a stronger bond between one of those communities, or was it an overall feeling?
The White House in general is a tough place, and the issues that you work on are always hard. I mean, that's just true. But it is also true that I think there was something special about the Obama team, frankly. And that it really does, it's really true that tone gets set at the top. He expected us to watch out for each other. He expected us to challenge each other. He expected us to challenge him. But he expected us to do it in a way that was respectful and loving. So, I mean, think about that. Even when you're having an argument, a disagreement about something that you're passionate about, and you're having an argument because the issue is really hard, the answer isn't clear. It's one thing to have that kind of a struggle and have it be about power and about who wins and who loses. And it's another thing to have that struggle because you were genuinely wrestling with something where the answer is not clear. And, at some level, it was a special experience, but at another level, look, it wasn't any different than anything else. There were, amazing people and people who were tough to deal with. But really, we see each other now and we think, man, do I miss us? Do I miss the sense of working as part of a team, even when we disagree. And very importantly, it's not just that the president set the tone, but people like Valerie set the tone. There is precedent for and history for in some settings, people of color working together. There's the analogy that people make about crabs in the pot, right? That you pull each other back into the pot rather than let somebody get out. And that's always possible. But it's not what happened in this White House. And that has a lot to do with the fact that people like Valerie set the tone. You know what? We're going to watch out for each other. You know what? We're going to create safe spaces for each other. We're going to give each other feedback. We're going to create the kind of environment where I'm communicating that if you succeed and I'm helping you succeed, then we all succeed. And I believe in work and in life modeling the kind of behavior that you hope to elicit from your peers. And even when you're working with folks who are hard to be around, responding with kindness. And kindness is not, there's a chapter in my book about kindness. It's not the opposite of forcefulness, and it is not the opposite of strength. People mistake kindness for weakness, and they're wrong.
Yeah.
Right? You can have a disagreement. You can even have a fight in a way that is loving and expresses, I respect you as a human being, even though I disagree with your view right now. And we need a lot more of that in this country in this moment.
I have to say that in reading the book, that was especially powerful for me. And I want to make sure that people understand this is not, again, just a book for women or women of color. This is for all of us. I mean, especially there are things in here that women of color will find more meaningful because that's, but for me reading it, it was wonderful to hear these voices and really be able to have a sense of that place. And I think that it's so wonderfully constructed. I mean, this could have been, an easy thing. This could have been, like I have this position, I have this history, and I'm going to write this book, and it's going to sell but you did so much more, and you created something that is so meaningful and powerful and necessary, especially right now. The timing of it, I think, couldn't be better.
Well, to be honest, I'm not the sort of person, I'm not particularly comfortable talking about myself, and I didn't write a memoir, and I don't really have it in me to write a memoir, and I still think I'm not quite sure that I'm interesting enough to have written a memoir. But when it became clear to me, no, this is about telling stories from throughout my career and the careers of other women that that shows something that I learned and that I think other people could benefit from, that feels completely different to me. And here's the thing, we all go through these things. We all have these moments. We've all been underestimated. That's a human experience, and it particularly happens to women. And wow, does it happen to women of color? These are common experiences, and it really is time to share them. And there is, I think of it as a sign of strength, frankly. And the women that I spoke to were really generous in saying hard things. My colleague and friend, Kathy Cochin, who's an extraordinary leader from the Chinese American community, talks about what it cost her family that she was so driven in her career. That wasn't easy for her to say. But it's really important to hear, because we all wrestle with these things.
And I think that telling these stories creates a platform for us all to be able to hear things better. Because when you are part of these experiences, when you get to read about these experiences, then when you see it in your own work, when you see it in your office, or you see it in your school, or you see it on the street, wherever it may be, you're more apt to recognize it, and you're more apt to be able to have an empathy and an understanding of a situation better when you know the stories that have come before it.
Well, I think that's true, and I think we underestimate kindness and empathy as leadership qualities. And I think that's important to address. Like, what our models of leadership, what we understand as leadership, the people who get lifted up as heroes and have gotten lifted up historically, to the way history has worked, those models are male models. And it's taken us a little longer to understand women as leaders, right? We've just had this conversation in the presidential primaries, where we had some extraordinary and incredibly well-prepared women from a variety of perspectives. And we still managed to have a conversation about whether or not we think a woman can do this job, or whether or not we think we're ready for a woman to do this job. I mean, we're still having that conversation. We still can't quite hear a voice that sounds like my voice and think, oh, that's a leader's voice, because we haven't heard enough of them yet. Right. So we have work to do. But kindness and empathy, the case that I make in the book is that these are a skill set. And what made me successful as the president's domestic policy advisor is not just my policy chops. I mean, I have policy chops, but I wasn't the smartest person in the room, probably not ever. But I could read the room. I could understand if there was a disagreement, as you might expect there would be sometimes between, say, the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Commerce, right? They'd come at issues from different directions. Of course, they disagree sometimes. My job was to make sure they both got heard, and they both understood that they got heard, so that the president could make a decision on the basis of the best possible information. And if they felt that the process was fair, that they got a chance to make their case, even if he decided the other way, they could embrace the decision and go out and implement it. And my job was to make that happen. In order to accomplish that, you need some policy acumen, but what you really need is empathy. You really need the ability to read a room and to understand what people need in order to feel like they are part of the team, even if their view doesn't prevail.
All right, so we've been talking for a half an hour, and I have to call you out on something.
Okay.
I keep hearing you discount yourself, and I keep hearing you say, I wasn't the smartest person in the room. I would never be that smart. I don't think that's true. I think there are fantastic moments where you're the smartest person in the room. I guarantee it. Not only because of who you are, but because I know other people too. So the bar is always not that high. And I hope that that's also not part of what happens to women as they're growing up, and what they're taught to think, and how they're always put in a place where they think that they can't have that stronger voice.
So I describe, I'm a Latina. The lens that I can describe this through is just my own personal history and my own experience. I talk about this. I'm a Latina. I'm 5'2". I am, pretty soft-spoken and self-effacing. So I don't take up a lot of space in a room. That's just true. Early in my career, I describe kind of arriving in Washington in a circle of advocates on immigration who are mostly men, and they're all tall. And one of the stories I tell is about having to literally use an elbow to break my way when they kind of formed a little huddle at the end of a congressional markup. But the other story I tell is feeling like I had to compensate for like what I wasn't able to convey physically because I'm short, and because I don't like present with power the way we understand power. So I took up swearing, which is something I was not raised to do. But I did it very deliberately, and it was a strategy to kind of fit in with the guys and to help myself be understood as tough. And I see a comment from Jane Geetson, who is someone I know, a friend from college who I love. Thank you, Jane. It's nice that you're here. But I took up swearing to convey toughness because I didn't think I conveyed it physically. And that says something. And I asked every single woman that I talked to for this book, do you feel like, do you have to think about like what you wear, how you present yourself physically? And every single one of them said yes. Every single one of them, right? Patricia Worthy, professor at Howard Law School, has the story about getting arrested for wearing a pantsuit in court. It's a great story. But Congresswoman Jayapal talks about, she is the first South Asian woman elected to Congress. She talks about, she doesn't feel she can wear traditional dress if there are going to be photos with constituents because she's not sure how they will react. And she's very honest about it. She says, I still struggle a little bit with like, what's the right attire for a South Asian woman to wear on the floor of the House of Representatives, right? There's not a lot of precedent for that. And so it's a tightrope, and people walk it, but women really walk it, and women of color walk it big time. And
Right.
There's kind of a debate. Different women in the book have different views on, Patricia Worthy, who teaches African-American law students, says, I know my students like to express who they are with what they wear, and I have to tell them that may not work in a law firm. And she encourages them to dress conservatively because they're trying to succeed in a world which still values that. So that's it's a phenomenon that women still deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that you really have to always think about is that whatever decision I'm making, how many other filters is that decision put through for a woman, and then for a woman of color,
Mm-hmm.
and then for a woman who may be a woman of color who's LGBTQIA or differently abled or whatever, all these different communities that people can belong to, and how many filters go into any decision, whether it's what you wear, how you speak, what you say, all the things, where you walk,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a very base level that a lot of people don't still understand.
Well, and again, this is part of the reason for writing the book. 100% of us deal with it. I promise you 100% of us deal with it. We don't always talk about it. And we certainly don't talk about it in public settings. And I think we should. I think it's time kind of for the rest of the world to understand what we're dealing with, because I think that's part of how we conquer it, right? It's how we create the space for us to just be who we are, and for other people to look at us as we are and see leaders, because that's already who we are.
Right. And I'm throwing the title of the book up again for everybody, because I know that we have a whole mess of people watching, which is wonderful. And every single one of them should buy the book, buy a few copies of the book for friends, family, neighbors, while we're stuck inside. It's a perfect thing to read in the bath. I was just doing that earlier, actually. So go to indiebound.org and buy the book. And we have some more comments that popped up. Ida says, the Obama team, I'm in tears. Yeah. And I want to get down to here. So can you read that?
Yeah, this is from Delia Garza, who says, you're a chingona, don't downplay it. But I totally get wanting to stay humble. I have to say, I love getting called a chingona. It's it's high praise, and I appreciate the spirit in which it was offered.
Well, I one of my favorite. There's a blurb on the back. Is it on the back of the book? And usually they're superficial, and they're sometimes people are even paid to write them, and you can tell that these are heartfelt and very meaningful. And my favorite is from Sandra Cisneros, who's one of my wife's favorite authors. My wife is by the way, a 5'1" Boricua public defender here in New Jersey, and she fills a room. But Sandra Cisneros says, Cecilia is a wise guy who happens to be a woman.
Yeah. Sandra, she has a way with words. She's an extraordinary person. She was very generous to read what I had to offer and to offer up her views about it. So I'm very grateful to her. And she's somebody, she's obviously a very famous novelist, but she is somebody who is unafraid to tell the truth as she sees it. And I admire and respect that really greatly. And she's, a lot of us, particularly my daughters, my daughters are in their 20s, came up reading her works. And she's one of those voices that helps us remember we can be ourselves.
So you mentioned your daughters, and you talk about being a Latina mama.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about that experience. Tell us how do you balance that? How do you, from what's expected of you, from the culture, and then what you want to bring to it, and how do you find that? Because it must be difficult. I mean, it is difficult at times. You talk about it, and you seem to be very successful at it. So it's wonderful that you impart this experience and wisdom to others.
There's a couple chapters in the book about balancing work and life, and one of them focuses on family. And I, my daughters are 24 and 27, and it occurred to me that instead of kind of agonizing and thinking about, because I did agonize when they were growing up about balancing the kind of mom that I wanted to be and the kind of mom that I had, and with the challenges of my work and trying to make a difference in the world, it occurred to me, well, shoot, they're adults. I can ask them, like, how did it go? And I did. I wrote to them both and said, I'm writing this thing, and I would just love your honest view. Like, I really wrestled with the following things, and I'd love to know what it looked like from your perspective. Because I realize I have a lot of colleagues who are raising kids now, and right at this moment, they're in the middle of trying to work from home and homeschool their kids, and it's super hard. And all of them, 100% of them, have that feeling of like, I'm doing everything halfway. And I see the agonizing, and I remember feeling it. And one of the wonderful sort of surprises and gifts from the process of writing the book was hearing back from my daughter. So what they wrote back is in the book. And the amazing thing to me is, for all of the agonizing that I did, they don't even understand the question. I tell the story that my older daughter found in the basement a book that my husband gave to me on Mother's Day when she was little. That's called My Mother Worked and I Turned Out Okay. And she thought this book was hilarious. And that was when I sort of realized she doesn't really grasp that this was super hard for me, and that I really agonized about whether I was getting it right. And the way my girls see it, from their experience, parents are people who do work in the world. And, all of the things I was worried they might think and feel, or all the ways in which I was worried I might undercut their own selves and their success, they don't see it. It didn't materialize for them. And the fact that my husband and I were both out there trying to do our work in the world, but also communicating to them very clearly that they were the most important thing. Like, they got it. And they were able to tell me, yeah, we got it. So like the garden was a mess, and we live in a little tiny house, and it was never immaculate. And there's a segment about, my mother was this amazing cook, and like, we had healthy meals, but they were not like the meals my mother put on the table. But they're all right. Like, my kids are fine. In fact, they're great. But more importantly, the most important stuff, the values we were trying to lay down, they got, even if the house did not conform with the picture in my head of what it was supposed to be like.
So that's you have to then adjust your expectations.
Yeah, that's expectations is exactly the right word. Like I think of it as the picture in your head. And in this moment where we got social media and people are posting things on Instagram, and like there's the Instagram worthy version of our lives, and then there's the reality of our lives. I think we all struggle with, wow, this is not consistent with the picture I have in my head, or even the Instagram worthy photo I want to convey to the world. And I think that's a really big burden, right? There was no Instagram when my kids were coming up, but the picture I had in my head, and I tell the story that we bought a house with a yard because I was expecting to be a gardener. And I just never made it out there. In fact, my friends threw me a wedding shower all about garden tools because I was expecting to have this fabulous garden, and it just never happened. And, I tell that story because I've learned to think of myself as a gardener of other things, right? That the picture in my head of what the garden was going to look like never happened. That was not something I gave to my girls, but I did give them something else, I think. And unfortunately, they know what it is. And it's so... it's all about letting go of the picture in your head and embracing what is and doing your best and recognizing that it's enough.
But that's hard because you came from, your parents were both immigrants from Bolivia, right? Mm-hmm. So that culture was very different than what you're raising your family in, but you also want to be respectful of your family and what came before, right?
Yeah. The women in my family, who were all amazing, were also traditional and, did not have a job that required commuting into the city every day and putting your kids in daycare. And so I really worried that I was shortchanging somebody in some way. And I've learned over time that they got the important stuff, and that's really my message to my younger colleagues. And I have to say, I talk my younger colleagues off of the ledge almost daily, reminding them, you know what, your kids are going to be fine. Like, I know they had more screen time today than you wanted. And I promise you, all of the agony about that is yours, not theirs. And you can let go of it. You're doing the best you can.
And how does your family feel about your work and your journey, and what's been their reaction to as you move forward in doing the work that you do and doing the wonderful things that you do? Are they cognizant of it?
My family made it possible, and they know it, right? Especially the 8 years I spent in the White House. I could not have survived that without my husband making dinner every day and doing all the laundry and doing all the air traffic control with the children. Like, he really made it possible when I was home for me to be home. And I never asked him, he just did it. Which I can hardly talk about it without bursting into tears, because it is a deeply loving thing that he did. And my girls too. Like, I initially turned down the job when it was offered to me. Because my mother had recently passed, and I was worried about my kids. My daughters were teenagers at the time I went into government, and I got my arm twisted. But we also made the decision as a family that this was a contribution we were going to try to make as a family, and that's how we see it.
It's really beautiful that they've been such a strong part of not only your journey but the decision making at each part of the journey. I mean, I think that's so meaningful. What made you choose at the beginning to start public service? I mean, going to public service is one of the most thankless or the most difficult, one of the most time-consuming things that one can do. What was attractive about all of those wonderful qualities to you that made you choose that path?
I don't think I ever considered anything else. That's just how I'm wired. And that the advice I give to people earlier in their careers, or people who are changing their careers, is if you're interested in making a difference, there's a continuum of ways to do it. So if like working in government is on one side of the continuum and like being an organizer is on the other side of the continuum, there are infinite number of points in between. And your job is to find the point which fills your heart, where you feel like you're making a contribution, but a contribution that also fills you up. That's about input as well as output. And one of the stories I tell in the book is about how I came out of grad school feeling very sure I was destined for a job in direct service, like at an organization that had clients and was providing services to them. And I got one of those jobs, and it wasn't the right job for me. And I was disappointed in myself because I thought I was heading in one direction, and it turned out not to be the right direction for me. But through the course of doing that work and discovering that it was not what I was cut out for, I found what I was cut out for. I discovered my voice as an advocate and continued to, have a career in that direction. And I tell that story because sometimes we get set on our course by failing at first. And not only is that okay, for me, it was necessary. Your job is really to find what I think of it as finding what is yours to do. I mean, if you think about it, and my colleagues are all wrestling with this right now, there is so much need in the world right now, so much need in the country, so much need in our communities, so much at this moment. None of us can fix all of it, right? None of us. But there's a piece, whatever it is, that each of us is equipped to address, from whether it's watching out for your neighbor who's home alone, who can't get to the grocery store, to, whether it's addressing the impact of the pandemic in Africa. Like it could be vast, it could be no vaster than your own block. But there's something that's ours to do, and our job is to find it and to find the thing that's yours to do that you can take joy in. And if it's the thing that you can take joy in, you can even have setbacks. And it's okay. And even the setbacks, you take joy in. I tell the story in the book about the immigration bill that I've been working on for 20 years going down in the U.S. Senate, and Senator Kennedy throwing a party that day for us when we were in tears because this thing we've been working so hard on that should have passed didn't pass. And I realized at that party that what he was communicating was there is joy in the work. Even when you lose, that's part of the road that takes you somewhere, and there's joy in it.
Right, because it's all, the journey cannot just be one thing. It's a multitude of things that we grow from, that we learn from, that we share. Something you said earlier, I want to pull that thread. You said that on one side is government, the other side are organizers, and there are all these points in between. But do you feel, and this is a loaded question, that the reason the Obama White House was so successful and was so meaningful was because there were so many organizers in it?
Totally. Absolutely. Right. And not just that there were so many organizers, starting with the president himself, but also folks who organized around a philosophy that, the way they worked for their candidate was by knocking on doors and telling their own stories, right? So, and this was kind of the very Obama approach to the campaign, but also the approach to governing, was making a personal connection, telling people, I'm here because I have a pre-existing condition, or my mother has a pre-existing condition, and healthcare and access to healthcare is really, really important to me. Making a personal connection between you and the person that you're organizing, and then connecting it to the larger, to the greater good, is kind of how it works, and it's how we approached governing. And it feels like the world needs more of that now, right? And we collectively, as a country, did a thing which people thought was impossible. When it's good to remember that, right? When the country thought there was no way we were going to elect an African-American man to the presidency, we did it twice. And we haven't stopped being the place that elected him twice. We're still that place. But we are a lot of things at the same time. We're a place that's capable of that. And, we're the place, we're still the same country that enslaved people. We're still the same country that interned Japanese Americans. Like we are, we're still the same country which which had the breakthrough on gay marriage. Like, we are all of those things at the same time. And our continual job is to find the way to be our best selves. And, we have some work to do on that front right now.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more tough question about the Obama White House, because the one piece that I had difficulty with was, it always seemed that there were two things that our president was doing. He was always, kindness was at the base of everything he did. And I think he looked to everyone else to have that same basic kindness. And I think that sometimes not everybody has that, unfortunately. And the other thing is, I always felt like he was playing a long game. And he was always engaged in, three-dimensional chess almost. Like, it was amazing to watch. And when it was successful, it was a beautiful thing. But there were times when I feel like other people were playing checkers, and there were opportunities that might have been missed in the House. And maybe, I don't know if you're comfortable speaking about this. Were there some of you who felt, gosh, we need to move faster on this, or stronger on this, or we need to push this a little harder, when he felt that restraint was better and he could win over the folks that were not hearing you or seeing you the way they should?
So I think he can be faulted, and I think he probably faults himself for underestimating how much the kind of other side was just uninterested in governing. Because it's just sort of unfathomable, right? I mean, we're getting a pretty big lesson in that right now, but for him, I think, was sort of unfathomable that you would allow the country to get hurt for the sake of your ideology. That's just kind of not in his vocabulary. But I'll tell you, he's a very ambitious guy, not for himself, but for what he wanted to accomplish, and incredibly tough. And frankly, one of the great moments of toughness was when all of Washington, D.C. was saying to him, will you please give up on health reform? It is dead. This bill died over and over and over again. Like, please give it up. Please shrink the bill down to maybe expand a little coverage for children, but let it go and move on, because it's not going to happen. And he said, no, this is why I ran. So, for all of the understanding of him as somebody who maybe had more confidence in humanity than some of his opponents deserved, he's also somebody who stuck it out because he was willing to stake his presidency for the sake of getting tens of millions of people access to health care. And, his view was, if I'm a one-term president because I tried to accomplish that, I'm pretty comfortable living with that. So that takes a lot of toughness and commitment.
Yeah. What's amazing to me is you see the pictures of him and you see that he is processing that idea of hundreds of thousands of lives at stake in the country. But you could also see every time he spoke to an individual, he was present.
Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of that. I think of it as something very generous in his nature and in the First Lady's nature, actually, because Mrs. Obama is the same way. That over the course of a day, he would have, 16 meetings. And if you're a chunk of time with him, there was a time when I had to brief him for a meeting he was about to go into. I had 5 minutes to get him up to speed on what he needed to know. And there were enormous events happening in the world that day. This was when Hosni Mubarak was giving the announcement that of stepping down. The world was changing. I had my 5 minutes to get him ready for a meeting that was not related to the world changing. And you could have forgiven him for being a little distracted, but I sat in and I had 100% of his attention for my 5 minutes. And then he went into that meeting. That meeting was with Latino leaders. And the world was changing around us. And people were scurrying around the Oval Office getting a statement ready for him to make later that day. And he was 100% theirs in that meeting. He was not distracted. He didn't lose focus. You could have forgiven him for being a little distracted on that day. But he understood, like, this, this may be a big day in the world, but for these people in this room, this is their opportunity for the President of the United States to hear what they're struggling with in this time of turmoil. And I need to hear it. I'm still in awe of that capacity that they had, and it's what made him a great president.
Well, please send him my love.
I will.
That would mean a lot. Gosh, I can't believe we're getting to our last few minutes. This has been so wonderful, and you've been everything I hoped for, and honestly more. I do want to touch on the work you're doing now. So can we do like a bonus round right quick of what you're involved with now, because it's so very important too.
Yep. So I work on we call it public interest technology. I'm trying to build a field of that the way we have a field of public interest law. And the idea is, the best example is right now the government has decided to extend people's unemployment insurance, which is great because people need it right now. So because so many people have lost their jobs, but the systems, state after state after state has had their systems crash. And the way that we are trying to change the world and change policymaking is to engage the people who we are trying to help through making policy, using the techniques that technologists use, using techniques that the Silicon Valley uses every day before breakfast so that you and I can buy shoes on our phones. You can use those techniques to engage people in designing the policies which are ultimately going to affect them. And if you do that, you'll be able to deliver the dollars right now that people desperately need in order to pay their rent. The government will fail less in delivering the things that we're trying to deliver. So we are focused like a laser right now in the folks who will benefit from the CARES Act, which Congress just passed, the folks who are supposed to benefit but who won't because the systems to get them what they need are broken, and then the folks who Congress ignored in passing the CARES Act. And we're trying to bring, it's not technology as much as it is the skills of technologists to the process of policymaking and of delivering policy.
And that's newamerica.org, is that?
That's right, yes.
Right. So I want to throw that up. Please visit that website and see the wonderful work they're doing. Just incredible things, and so glad. It's amazing how much difference you're making in so many different ways, in so many different phases of your life, and we cannot thank you enough for what you do, how you do it, and the kindness with which you do all of it. Kindness is something that we cherish here at the center, and the folks that we represent, it means the world to all of us. Please do know that we are here for you, and anything that we can do, please let us know. I do want to, there are a whole bunch of people, just want to say thanks. Ida says thanks. Paula says this is a wonderful conversation, and there's a whole litany of folks. But I do want to throw the book right up one more time. Please do get this book. You will enjoy it. It will be not only meaningful, but it is a wonderful, it's just wonderful. It's exactly, I mean, it couldn't come in a better moment. I know that you lost a book tour that you're probably looking forward to, but know that this book being here now for us is such a wonderful gift to so many. So go buy that book, buy it for your friends, your neighbors, and your family. Cecilia, thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Robert, for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for participating. It was really lovely.
I hope we get to see you again, and we wish you and your family the best.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Enjoy.
Thanks. Bye now.
So that was beautiful. And we cannot thank Cecilia Muñoz enough. Again, that was such an incredible, I cannot believe the hour went so quickly. And that was just a wonderful, wonderful experience to have together. And I'm so glad that you were here with us to enjoy it. So what I say, she is more than ready. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, for sharing in this replay of that extraordinary conversation we had way back in the nascent stages of our social justice power hour. And you ain't seen nothing yet. Although we've done 400 of these, we're going to do 400 more. We're going to be here for as long as folks want to join in virtual communion. And we're looking so much forward to seeing you back here. As I said, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, every single freaking weeknight. Please be here with us. We are here for you. And speaking of, please do join us live in concert, in person, masked and vaxxed, very safe, October 7th. Jill Sobey will be back with us, helping us find a new home for our headquarters. It's wonderful to do this all virtually, but we need a space for our friends, for our family, for our folks, for our community. And we will be looking toward building something new. And this will be a concert to help us do that in a very pivotal, important, and meaningful and fabulous way. So buy your tickets now before we sell out. We sold out the last one when she was with us during the summer. So make sure you get some tickets and make sure you come to the after party too. It's going to be really wonderful. And we look forward to seeing y'all there. But we will see you back here at the Power Hour. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thanks so much for joining us tomorrow night and every night here in Virtual Communion. We love you all so much. Be good to each other. Be good to your families, chosen or otherwise. And most especially, my friends, please be good to yourselves. You need it, and we need you here with us.
We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers.